In the last movie, we were able to isolate a portion of the background for the top and export it out as an image. Now the goal is to use that with the background property inside of CSS and control how it tiles. What we want to look at next is this second section up here towards the top, and again we have a gradient. When you have something like this gradient, you have to make a decision. In this case, we could make a selection much like we did in the last movie, isolating just a portion of that background, exporting it out as a bitmap and using it with the background property within CSS. Or do we want to generate the gradient completely with CSS, as that is an option with CSS3. There's advantages and disadvantages to both approaches. The advantage of exporting out an image is you're going to maximize browser compatibility, as not all browsers understand CSS3 properties, especially when it comes to gradients. Of course, on the flip side, if you do write the gradient in CSS, you're maximizing speed and performance for the web page. So it's completely up to you, and it's completely up to the needs of the project. For this monoplate project, we're going to go with speed and performance, and we're going to write the gradient using CSS3. But I did want to take a moment and show you how you should really approach creating this image. If you want to go with the image approach, it would be my recommendation to create one image for the top. So instead of having the image that we exported out in the last movie, then making a second selection for just this gray gradient and exporting that out, and having two separate images, your best bet is to create one image. By creating one image, you're making one less request to the browser, again, optimizing the performance of the page. So what you would do in a real-world situation is you would come over and highlight the marquee tool. And with the marquee tool, instead of having the height set to 40, you would set it to something like 90. Then you would click to make the selection. You can use the arrow keys on the keyboard to nudge it into place. And if you zoom into this selection, you'll see that you're able to grab the top portion in terms of the two columns, the gray box pattern and 1 pixel column of white information, as well as the gradient in the second portion of the header, the darker portion. This one image will ultimately produce exactly what we're seeing here inside of Photoshop, but it'll do it in a way that requires less load time on the server because you're requesting one image instead of two. And again, that may not seem important, but you have to remember with the proliferation of mobile devices, optimizing file size, speed, and performance still is incredibly critical when you're working on the web.